What up YouTube? It is Ben with Bearded Spruce back for another DIY project. I am super excited about this one. This is a project that I did for my daughter who is just over 3 years old and needed to move from her crib to a big girl bed, and so started doing a bunch of research on toddler beds. Really liked the house design like everyone else on Pinterest, but I wanted to do it my way, just a little bit different. So I decided to make it challenging and make it out of a single sheet of plywood. As you will see in this video, it took a lot of planning and calculations and gluing, but in the end, I think it turned out beautifully. I do want to give a shout out to my dad. He was out here celebrating my daughter's birthday and it lended a huge hand, both mentally, just trying to figure out some calculations for angles and all that kind of stuff, as well as just lending a hand, in the shop, building it and really working together, which is always a blast for me to be able to work with him. The cool thing about this project is it only takes one sheet of plywood and some hardware that we'll go over in the video. It is for a twin size mattress, and then I gave room to be able to tuck the sheets underneath and make the bed easily, especially for a toddler. It's super sturdy and I think it just turned out great. The hardware is all from Amazon, including the stuff that attaches these cross members, all three of those, the 90-degree angles down here, as well as the brackets that attach, that allow for the bed to be attached and unattached in the future if we do choose to move this to another bedroom or another house. One more thing before we get started, I noticed when I was editing this video, it started getting pretty lengthy. So I went ahead and put chapter notes in the description below with all the affiliate links and all that kind of stuff, so you guys can skip ahead or skip to a certain part in the project if you're watching it a second time to make it yourself or something. So check those out down below so you can easily get to whatever part of this process that you need to. The other thing I wanted to say is feel free to make comments below with questions or concerns that you have as you're doing this yourself. If you need tips on what tools to use or what materials I used during this project, I linked all of them in affiliate links below, which actually, if you shop through those links, will support my channel and support me making more videos like this in the future. All right, so it's time to dive into the build process. Let's go hop into the shop and start building this bed. I just finished ripping all the pieces. I'll show you in a second. But to make this possible to do with one sheet of plywood, you kind of have to do two phases of cuts. So first you have to rip the piece of plywood. If you need tips and tricks on how to rip plywood or other cutting techniques that I've learned in the last decade of using tools and cutting wood, I'll link to that video right up here. Otherwise, I'll put the rip list in the description below. You have 3 4-inch, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 2-inch, and 7 3-inch wide pieces here. You can see that they're all 8 feet long, just like a piece of plywood. I just ripped them to the right size, and now we need to start cutting them to the length, as well as gluing some of them that are going to be sandwiched together. Here are the plans for the bed. You can see the front view and then the side view here. We're going to make this 88 inches wide by 44 inches deep by 5.5 feet tall. All right, so now that I have all the boards ripped to the right widths, I'm going to cut them all down to size. I'm just gonna run through all the cuts really quick on my miter saw. Check the description below for a cut list. So here's all the cut pieces. I labeled a lot of them so I don't get them mixed up, but basically these 4 pieces will make up the sides, so like the long sides. These 4 pieces will make up the front and the back, so the short side of the bed. I'll glue these together, and 2 of these pieces will make the uprights. It will become one piece, so it's nice and sturdy. So there'll be 4 of those, And then same thing with the diagonal pieces. So there'll be the pieces going up and then the pieces going diagonal to make the house shape. And then these will be the cross members that will kind of stabilize the bed from there. So I'm gonna get all these glued up, and then once I get those glued up, it will make a lot more sense. Let's get gluing, and then we'll join back when I'm ready to start assembling. I don't have a ton of clamps. I'm gonna do this in 2 phases. So we'll do one set of pieces and then the other. This is where you wanna see which sides you want to stick out. I'm gonna do the more grainy side because I'm not gonna paint this, I'm gonna just finish it. So basically what you do is you put one side up and the other side down and put glue on one side and then sandwich it together, and then I'll do each one of those and sandwich them all and then clamp them all together and let them dry overnight. So let me get set up and I'll kind of fast forward through this stage. So we do some glue on this side. I want to get plenty of glue. I'm going to find a roller, and I just like to make sure it's nice and covered. It's alright if you get a little too much. You want more than you need, so it squeezes out a little bit so it's fully covered, so it doesn't. So we'll get tons of glue on here. I'm going to do the other side too. Just a thin layer on the other side. Wipe off a little excess. And do the next one. I don't know if you can see from that angle, but there's tons of glue pouring out, which is what you want. Again, if I'm gonna plane this afterward, but you can also just do a sander, palm sander, and so you wanna get as much off as you can so you don't have to work too hard. I'm gonna put a few more clamps on here, and then we'll let this hang out for about 24 hours. All right, so now that I have all these glued together, the end pieces glued together, and then I also put some hardware on as well as the uprights. So you have, the uprights will be, going from the floor all the way up to the cross members, essentially, that make the house shape. And so I cut these little block pieces just long enough to allow for the upright pieces plus the side pieces to be connected all together, and it will make a lot more sense once I get it on the floor and assemble it all. This is all just screwed together. I screwed in from the small piece, kind of the outside, and then I'll put some wood putty and sand it down and all that kind of stuff before I finish it. Just wanted to show that this is all going to be kind of one unit, and then I can carry it in through the door, and then there'll be this exact setup on the other side of the bed frame as well. Now I connected the kind of cross pieces, the roof line, as well as some hardware for the cross members. So here's the piece that we just talked about, the bottom of the end, and it's all going to be one piece, as you can see here. I basically put these pieces underneath uprights and then traced the angle both here and here, making sure that this was a perfect 90-degree angle. The uprights on both sides connected to the bottom piece of the frame, and then you have the roof line connecting at a 90-degree angle at the very top, and then these are both 45-degree angles. I think one was 45 and one was 47, but depending on how long these pieces are for you, just put it underneath the uprights, trace a line so you can kind of get an idea. And then we ended up cutting this end piece off so we could put one of these 90-degree brackets in here for added stability. And then I glued this joint as well. So everything's nice and glued up. It's strong, it's connected, and then I have these brackets. I'll show how those work in a second. So with this frame, I wanted an easy way to unassemble and reassemble. So I wanted to build it in the garage and then move it into my daughter's room. And in the future, I wanted the ability to move it to a different room because I'm sure we'll eventually move her around to different rooms in our house. So I wanted ease of unassembling and reassembling. So I bought these brackets on Amazon. I'll link them in the description below. So basically how they work, it's a typical bed frame corner, just like you'd buy at any big box store or online. Basically there's some set screws or kind of bolts that mount into the hardware. This piece is mounted to the upright, and then these bolts screw in, and you start them super loose, barely in there. And then the idea is, you know, like any bed frame, if you put one together, I'm sure most people have, it just slides right in there, and then you can remove and put back together as many times as you want. Then I had to figure out how to put these pieces, these cross pieces that kind of stabilize everything and make it look kind of like a house, how to connect those and disconnect them. And a lot of tutorials out there I've found do pocket screws, but in my experience, the more times you connect and disconnect the pocket screw, the worse the joint is. So if you're gonna end up building the bed in place, the pocket screws are fine. But what I've found is over time, they are worse and worse to keep things together. I got these brackets, and basically you can put all the screws in here. I still have one to put in here, but I just put one screw in the cross piece that I'm going to disconnect. And then when I get it into place, I can put the other two screws in. It's super easy to connect and disconnect. Did the same thing up here with a little bit bigger bracket because I also wanted to span this joint just to make this nice and strong. And I think from my perspective, the brackets actually make it more industrial looking, which I really like and my wife really likes. For this project, I'm using this Minwax water-based clear matte. I really didn't want to distort the color, so that's why I'm using a water-based. And then I wanted kind of a shine-free as much as possible, so I'm doing the clear matte. So then I'm gonna let it dry about 30 minutes. Come in, sand the whole thing. In between coats, I use something super fine. You can either use like a 220 grit sandpaper, or I use these kind of Brillo pads to get a clear finish and just kind of knock down any unevenness. We're gonna do 3 coats, and then we will come back and unassemble it, and then bring it inside and assemble it in place. Now it's finally time to put the bed together. So I got all the pieces up against this wall. We're going to assemble, get the mattress in here, and then we're done. So let's get started. Now that it's all connected and all together, I'm going to finish putting all the screws in, tighten up the bases, and then it's ready for the mattress. Hey, thanks so much for joining. This tutorial was so much fun to make. It was definitely one of the more difficult projects to put together and just to figure out overall, but I think the end result was totally worth it in the end, and I know my daughter loves it, and I hope if you make it for your kids, they will love it too. Thanks for joining, and we'll see you next time.